Today we're out in the shop, and what I have here is a Gannett. This is a 15cc 4-stroke model boat engine. These were manufactured in England. You can see on the crankcase GAN. Now I was able to purchase this at the Cabin Fever Model Engineering Exposition in Lebanon, Pennsylvania back in January this year. It's water cooled. Some of these came with a magneto mounted on the back here. This one is just standard spark ignition. When I got it home and took a look at it, it came in a cardboard box, so I pulled it out and studied it, and it has a lot of compression. It had the spark plug. It's got the condenser already wired up and soldered in. It's got adjustable point timing, as well as a choke on the carburetor, an adjustable needle valve, a throttle. These were built from about 1958 until about 1968. Flywheel is steel, and it has a groove here for your starting rope or cord. It has a drip oil system. So this little oiler has a screw in here, and you fill the glass bowl up here with oil, and then you adjust the screw to drip, and it drips down on the crankshaft, which then goes in and contacts the helical gear here for the valves and goes on into the engine and lubricates the engine. When I run this, I'm going to try to run it, but when I run these like this, I add a little oil to the fuel, just a few drops. The spark plug on this one, NGK CM6. So that's the spark plug that came with it. You can see the water jacket here with the intakes and exit for the cooling water. This would usually be connected to a tube under the boat that faced forward, or maybe just behind the propeller, so it would force water through the cooling jacket as it was running. There was an airplane version of this, but it didn't meet a lot of success because just a little too heavy and bulky for an airplane, coming in at I think a little over 3 pounds on the weight on this. The bore is 1 1/16 inch bore with a 1-inch stroke. The way the valves are adjusted is the shaft, the rocker arm shaft here, is eccentric, meaning you can turn it and it'll move the valves up and down. The whole rocker will go up and down, so you can adjust the valves. I haven't adjusted them. I'm going to see if it'll run as is, since these were, of course, set up at the factory. Now you can see this nice little plate here. I don't know if you can read that, but it says Northern. Kind of a weird. George Northern was the guy that designed this engine. N-U-T-R-H-E-N. N-U-T-R-H-E-N. Northern, something like that. Northern Morgan Muirhead Engineering, England. That's what it says there on that little plaque. So what I intend to do is run this. So I've set up a little. This is a 3-volt Wilco coil. These were made, back in the day. I'm not sure, probably 40s, 50s. Wilco 3-volt coil. Then I've got 2 C cells. These C cells came out of a light plane emergency locator transmitter. It's an outdated one, but the batteries in those were high quality. You can see this says industrial. Panasonic Industrial, and they're 1.3 volts. They actually come in a little over 1.5 volts. They come in at like 1.56 volts. So you get a nice strong battery, 3 volts. These coils will take up to 4.5 volts. I have the wires. I got the positive side, which this will go to the ignition. This will go to the ground, just the base, the mount, and of course the top of this coil. This goes to your spark. This is your high tension spark plug that goes here. So I've been running this on the workbench with some clamps, but years ago my grandfather had black walnut on some property he owned. He had it cut. The guy wanted to log this property. I don't know how many acres it was. And my grandfather said, yeah, you can log it, but I want you to save me all the black walnut that's in there. It's quite a bit. So my grandfather saved it. My father saved it for years and years. And I finally collected some out of, when my father passed away, I collected some of this black walnut, beautiful wood, out of the basement of my father's old house. This is going to be my running mount and display mount for the Gannett. Now this one has, I don't know if this was a factory thing or what, but it has kind of a flexible flex joint here. It's not really a universal, but it's a flex joint, and it's, you know, if you have misalignment between your boat drive shaft and the engine mount, then this will absorb some of that. This is a leather disc, so quite old, but that's the only thing, that's the only bolt it has for the crankshaft threads, and I couldn't determine the threads, or 3/8 24, 3/8 16, neither one of, or 18, it's neither one of those, so it's somewhere in between 24 and 18. I imagine it's like 3/8 20 or something odd. I was gonna fashion a nut for it, so I wouldn't have to have all this bulky stuff on there, but man, this thing has some serious compression. All right, to start it, I'm going to use this is a water filter O-ring, and it fits nicely in the groove here. Now, when this was in your boat, see, you would loop a string through here twice, and then bring the string up where you could out of the hatch of your boat, and, you know, pull the string back and forth rapidly to get it to start. In this case, I'm going to use this O-ring and a drill. I machined a little, this is a piece of scrap aluminum, and then I machined with my South Bend 9, machined a little groove in it. Use that to start it. You could also make this, you could make it out of wood, and, you know, anything that will spin it. So the only thing I've done to this engine to get it ready to run was to oil it, and I gave it some a few drips in here in the oiler and on all the critical parts. I gave it some Marvel Mystery Oil. This is pretty good stuff. I use it in all my engines. It does help prevent rust. This engine would be used in a boat, so I'm going to show you the boat that I've been building to test run some of my engines in. Boat that I have is a Vic Smead design. I think it was supposed to be like 50 or 56 inches long. It's called the Vivacity. It's like a cabin cruiser. This Vic Smead was also British, and he wrote articles in Model Engineering and Model Boat magazines, Model Airplane magazines. He designed the famous Tomboy free flight model airplane that was very successful in England and in Australia. So I have this Vic Smead design that I'm going to show you right now. Okay, this is the Vic Smead design Vivacity, and this is still under construction, as you can see. This would be typical of the model that would be powered by the Gannett engine, such as this. Another engine that's typical of this era would be, this is the Kiwi, designed by Edgar Westbury, and that might also fit in this boat. This engine's pretty heavy. I mean, it's probably in the range of 5 pounds. So you'd take a pretty big boat, as you can see, you'd have the engine, 3.5 pounds. You'd have your battery, coil, condensers, and then, of course, in the 1958, when the Gannett was first put on the market, radio control was kind of in its infancy, and they did have radio control, but the radios were still tubes, or valves, as the British call them. You would have several valves, then you'd have a separate battery just for the servos. The servo motors would have batteries, the receiver would need batteries, and everything was rather large, and all the mechanical connections. So you can see this boat was originally designed to be over 50 inches long. I reduced it down, I shrank it down to, it's 45.5 inches for my, bigger than this, and it just gets awkward, you know, when you take it out to run it in the pond. I was planking the top here with this nice planking I had. I actually cut these planks from redwood. I think it was a redwood picnic table that started to rot on the legs and was no good to sit on anymore, but I took some of the good pieces and ripped up a bunch of these planks to use as the decking. It looks rather nice, but I haven't stained it yet. Probably just put some clear on it. But I got halfway through and I realized I hadn't mounted the engine, and these engines are so big that it was going to be awkward. So I'll show you what I mean here. Take the top off. Here's the way these work. This whole cabin, the house as we call it, this lifts off as one piece. Then you can set this aside and work on your engine and hatch and everything. Then you have this, the forward engine access hatch. I kind of dressed it up with these bars. This is what it would actually look like. Keep people from walking around in the deck and putting their foot through the window, or you know, dropping the anchor or something on here. So this is the access hatch for the engine. You can see here the engine mounts. You see what I did on these planks. Oops, I should have got this all built before I started this top planking, because I have access here. So I stop right here. Once I get the engine mounts all drilled and everything lined up with here's the drive shaft, then I'll finish planking these edges. And then my only access is going to be here, here, and through here. You can see this is actually smaller than my midget engine. It's not as high, but you still need this hole here. Still not going to fit. Anyway, you get the idea. Go in something like this. Then you're going to need, I'm going to need all my ignition hookups like this. These will all go down here through the hatch. Hook all that up, and then hopefully the flywheel is just going to clear right here, so I'll be able to start it this way. Drive shaft, and then back here I'm going to have the servos, the receiver. These are Dumas accessories for. There's a fire extinguisher and a horn. I ordered those off the Dumas website. Rudder connection comes up through here. Rudder servo. The throttle servo will go up here. I'll have throttle on it. This is the throttle right here. Alright, there's the Vic Smeed Vivacity with the engine kind of in position, not completely finished. For my next trick, I'm going to try to run this engine just as it came from the auction. So here I have the engine set up on the workbench. I've got it clamped so it can't get away, hopefully. I'll show you how I hooked up the ignition. Now I got this ignition wiring diagram from this book right here. This is Model Petrol Engines by Edgar Westbury. This is out of publication, but you can get it at sometimes used book sales online. Here's the diagram. So you can see the coil there at the top. The battery, it says 4 volts, I'm using 3. And they've got a switch on the negative side. Earth is ground, of course. I am using a switch on the positive side. Then you got your condenser between the contact and the coil there. This says applicable to all small single cylinder engines. So here is the reality of that. So here's the coil. Here's the negative side of the coil coming over here to the base of the points. Here's the negative side of the battery going to ground. Right here. See, I've got that one black. So here's the positive of the battery and the positive of the coil. And I've just got connectors here. So when I touch these together, the points will be hot and it'll be ready to start. And of course the top of the coil, the high tension lead of the coil, goes up to the spark plug. And then for a fuel tank, I've just got, you'd have a bigger fuel tank if you're going to run your boat. Probably twice this size, but this is 1-inch diameter copper tubing with little caps soldered on the ends. So I have this filled up with fuel. Here's what I'm using for fuel. This is camp fuel. Coleman fuel is actually, this is Walmart's version of Coleman fuel. Some type of alcohol, and I've got a little funnel there. So I've already filled it up. So once I connect these, and I've got these sutures here, whatever they are, and they're just acting as a fuel valve, because tank's a little bit above the carburetor, slightly, not much, but when I turn on the fuel, it just goes into, it leaks into the carburetor until the fuel tank's like half full. So I've got my water filter O-ring seal here, and the drill. So we're ready to try to start this. Okay, contact. Contact. Ow. Here we go. Alright, good start. My O-ring went where? Crack the needle valve a little more open. Throttle. Let's see what that does. That game's got some vibration to it. All the engine mount bolts was vibrating loose. The cylinder mount bolts are vibrating loose. Craziness. Anyway, runs good. It runs strong. A lot of vibration. Ears are ringing a little bit now. It's got some serious compression. That's the Gannett. 15cc Gannett model boat engine. Runs rather well, I must say.